Well, hello everyone, and welcome on in. We are going to be talking about creating openly as Logitech creators, Logitech partners, and being affiliated with Logitech G. And I want to take a moment to let everybody introduce themselves. I'm going to be your host and moderator, Pleasantly Twisted. People can refer to me online as PT or Vanessa. I go by she, they pronouns, and I'm going to be the one kind of taking a backseat on a lot of stuff and trying very hard not to hoard the spotlight. My two guests, would you like to introduce yourselves?
Okay. Because I
And
was
you
like,
go
I
first.
was
I
about
already
to hand it
decided
over
for
to
you.
Justin. But hi. My name is M or Mxiety. Pronouns are she, her. My goal with my content, mostly live streaming, but I also write. I do some other stuff that, of course, now that I need to say it, I can't remember. But basically, my goal is to make mental health conversations less stigmatic. And I do think that we've done a really good job on improving that. I mean, like where I was 6 years ago when I had started creating content was I had a horrible time at my job, and I thought that I had lost everything because of that, because of my mental health and how it had plummeted. And then I decided to create a space where the goal was simple, to just talk about it, to just talk about feelings, because nobody, for some reason, everybody's afraid to do it, but everybody wants to do it. And at the same time, everybody feels, lonely for not being able to do so. And so, yeah, I wanted to create a space. And then over the course of the past, like five plus years, I've learned that not only has my mental health improved through all the various stuff that I've been able to do, whether it's therapy, whether it's interviewing other mental health professionals and getting like good, reliable information from them, and creating a space where people can, just hang out and be themselves, and learning that that also included a bunch of other stuff. For example, I learned that I have most certainly been bisexual my entire life, but never ever let myself express that. And part of the reason for that was very similar to why I never talked about mental health stuff. And basically learning in these 5 years that like part of the journey is embracing all of who you are. And that meant also making sure that I can create a space where other people get to embrace all of who they are.
Okay, well, I'm not gonna be nearly as smart as M, so just right off the bat, I want to remove that
Oh
expectation,
my
Oh
okay?
no.
god.
So,
We're
but
starting with
still
self depreciation. I see how it is.
still extremely excited to be here.
Right. I
My
would
name
say
is
starting
Justin
point
J.
is solid.
Wee. I'm a multidisciplinary artist, but most of my work at the moment, at least, lays in the genre of photography. Um, and yeah, I think a lot of I think the kind of um, foundational um, like genesis of my work is rooted in trying to figure out how as like queer people or minoritized people we can take the thing that has caused us a lot of trauma or pain, and figuring out how to turn that
Mhm.
burden into something that is generative and beautiful, as opposed to something that just remains like something that fossilizes you basically. Um, so I'm really grateful that I get to use
Mhm.
art and in a way that not only creates other images and reflections of things that I want to see, or that other people are putting out into the world that are really inspiring as well.
Well, I mean, it's always about inspiring others around you too, right? Like that was going to be something I was going to jump off of for my space in this, because obviously I'm your host, your moderator, but I'm also a part-time streamer. And for me, it was really a case of I've only been out as asexual for 6 years. I've only been out as bigender for roughly a couple of weeks. And it was things that kind of like similar to M and similar to what you were saying, Justin. I kind of always deep down knew, but I didn't really have the avenue or the space to explore or openly engage that. And so one of the things I focus on in terms of my experience and journey is that streaming is actually what helped push that boundary for me, and I made it a commitment to say, when I stream, I want to make sure that these are the actual communities that I'm accommodating the most by and large. Because we have plenty of, for lack of better phrasing, non-LGBTQIP plus people that are out there and thriving. But I felt like it was really important to me to start fostering a space that was explicitly for more LGBTQIP plus people, more black people, more people of color, and show them, hey, we exist out there and we're not just gaming, we're also speed runners, we're also challenge runners, we are also the type of people that do these really cool and exciting things in gaming. And that's also how I discovered that I am apparently also a challenge runner and a speed runner, question mark. I do games really fast sometimes, and people are like, yeah, and I'm just like, I always just thought that it was a weird thing I did, but that's, if y'all like it, I love it, actually. But all of that kind of leads into a really good first question for our conversation today is, what does it really mean for you to work, live, and create openly? Like, you've both kind of touched on the idea of queerness being underrepresented or suppressed in some cases. So what is it like to work and live while open like this?
Well, it's obviously a huge privilege to be able to create an environment that's free of, familial or I mean, societal pressure exists everywhere, but I live in New York City, which is very, very, very much a bubble. And so I'm very grateful for my little bubble. Um, but I think that I mean, people get into art for different reasons. People create the things that they create for different reasons. So I don't want to knock anyone's approach to art, but the art that I find most
Mm-hmm.
transformative, and the art that, or just, I mean, the sort of work that I find most engaging as a human to be involved in is work that
Mm-hmm.
comes from like me. Um, and like when I am
Mm-hmm.
asked to go on assignment and photograph something that isn't of me, I'm still putting that thing through through my lens and through my filter. Um, and so I think that I think that I just I'm constantly trying to figure out how I can create an image of something that feels not only true to
Mm-hmm.
the thing that I'm photographing, but true to the way that I see that thing too.
And so a lot of it, I feel like you're saying that it's about finding a way to inject yourself into that work. And it's not even necessarily that it has to be seen, but
Yeah,
that you know that this is your work and this is
yeah,
for the people that you're presenting it
yeah.
to. I can get behind that. I can get behind that. I caught myself. I almost
You did
cursed.
so good.
Good
You
You
job.
did so
did.
good.
And then M, how about you? Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And then M, what does it mean for you
It's
to work,
it's
live,
it's
and create
interesting because
openly?
I immediately kind of get into my head about that because there's definitely plenty of scenarios in which I'm not I have the privilege as a cis white woman to not have to be open if I don't want to in a lot of scenarios. And so making the
Mm,
choice of I am going to do this because actually it's not about me, and if I do want to exist in this space from and claim to be I this dirty word influencer or even or claim to want to
influencer's fine
or
here. You're
claim to
safe
want
here.
to help. If I'm here claiming that I want to help other people feel more comfortable with themselves, one, I should be embracing myself as much as I can comfortably at the time, but also make sure that I'm uplifting people from identities that I can't relate to and might not have any experience to understand. And so for me, creating
Mm-hmm.
openly, while again I always double back because there are definitely parts of my life where I just don't have to and don't necessarily talk about this, whether it's mental health or my sexuality or a number of other things. I'm still waiting for the call from my parents being like, yeah, so we watched that Logitech panel. We're really proud of you, but like, do you want to talk about how you haven't come out to us? No.
Oh no.
They're in Russian. They speak Russian.
no.
We're good. We're all set.
No.
I mean it from the perspective of
Oh.
exactly that. I might not be open with them, but I had the privilege of writing a blog post where I got to reflect on like when exactly I knew I was bisexual and why I kept it to myself and when I decided it was safe enough to open up about that. And as I was describing that experience, I actually got a notice from somebody from and I talked about the fact that I am from Russia. I immigrated to the U.S. when I was 14, and I talked about the effects of that, and obviously we all know how things are with LGBTQ communities in Russia. And I got a letter back from somebody who's in Russia now, and they expressed gratitude and were thankful, and they talked about the fact that kind of what you were saying, PT. It took you a while to get here, but now we're here and we're out, and that's what matters, right? And it was one of those. It was a great, sobering reminder of you get really stuck in your head, and you're like, oh, why did I do that? Why do people don't need to know this? And there's no, this is so silly and self-serving, and then you'll have somebody tap you and be like, actually what you said made me feel less alone, and I am similar to you in more ways than you realize, and you being vulnerable helped me embrace this part of me that I probably could never talk about otherwise. And that's an honor and a privilege. That's a privilege to have somebody reach out to you and be like, you said something that helped me be more of me. And that's why you do it. That's why it might be baby steps, and I might have not come out to every person maybe in my life who I will eventually come out to in the future, but taking those steps and seeing that every time you might be helping somebody else embrace who they are, it's really cool.
Yeah, and kind of going off of that myself, so I'm in a very weird situation where my dad knows about my queer identity, but my mother does not. And we're not going to get into the details and the nitty gritty of all of that. But you both kind of said a lot of things that I think a lot of people can resonate with. Justin, especially in your case, I like to refer to myself as a washed up artist. I used to do art and I wanted to do video game character concept design. And it just got to a point where I realized that I stopped doing it because I didn't like the idea of being paid to draw just the same like Space Marine over and over and over again. And kind of looking back at it, I realized that there were so many tiny signs in my life of, you're not straight, right? Like, you're gonna get there eventually, but you know this, right? And I remember kicking it around, being like, oh no, it's not, this is fine. But kind of going back to the main question, in terms of what it means to create openly for me, I feel like it's kind of a self-defining phrase. It means I get to create openly. I am not under restrictions. I am not repressed. I am not forced into a bubble where I don't feel like I get to be myself. I get to be me to the utmost degree. And that's dope. And a lot of people who are in those same kind of spheres can kind of resonate with that and feel that. And they're like, okay, this feels like somewhere where I can fit in now, as opposed to kind of navigating it the same way you do a lot of things we do in day-to-day life, where there are still some cases, and you're both welcome to chime in on this, there are still some cases where even with all those things said, we may still feel like there are certain scenarios where we have to be repressed. There's still some cases where, oh, I gotta make sure I don't do these things, I gotta make sure I don't mention this and I don't bring this up, and I gotta make sure that like I dial back some of my artistic vision, or I have to make sure that when I write this, I'm not too on the nose types of things. And so being able to actually even explore that in any degree, I think is a really big boon. And I think it's a huge win for everyone that's on this panel right now, for all of our fans that watch us, for all of our fans that love and support our work. And I really, really just, it's almost inspiring just to hear other people talk about, I struggle with this too, but that's okay. That's fine. That's perfectly fine. And that's normal. I think that's another thing that's really important. It's normal. And it's okay to look at that stuff and be like, we don't expect you to figure it out overnight, but we just want you to feel good enough to even explore it at all. But I digress because I don't want to take the floor from everybody.
It's a
I do
great
have
point.
more things that we need to talk about.
If I could, I want to elaborate on it. Oh, smidgy. I think it's absolutely every time that we create a tiny little space where we carve out that, like, I've felt that a piece of your soul break away as you walk into a room and you look around and you're like, oh, I'm not gonna be myself today. Cool, just gonna put this mask on and pretend to be whatever version of me you need me to be. And having these, no matter how big or small these spaces are, where you can, remove that and be like, oh, cool, I get to be me. I could dork out about, like, whatever I'm super, super interested right now, and you don't mind, or or I could just talk about the fact that I'm bisexual and make silly jokes with you about that. Like, oh, that is so cool. So to, whether we're creating these spaces or finding those tiny little nooks where you kind of restore that piece of your soul that you have to chip away when you can't be yourself, it's really cool.
I think that I have a slightly different relationship to kind of the notion of safety, and it's something that's only started to take shape a little bit over the last year. But I mean, obviously, it's so important to be creating spaces where, where we allow other people to see themselves in their fullness. I think something I've discovered over the last year is to also not be afraid of the discomfort that comes from being in an environment where you know that you're the anomaly. Because I've found that, I mean, in my work, I've had to be in some spaces where I'm like, oh, I definitely don't belong in this particular space. And I've definitely felt really awkward moving around, where I've definitely felt like a lot of people have always been looking at me and being really critical of how I'm moving within a space because I have a camera. And actually, I've realized that some of that tension can actually inform the work, and it becomes this dialogue between the artist and the environment that they've been put in, this environment where they don't feel entirely safe. And so there is a sense of unease to, imagery that can be created in that environment, which in and of itself is very useful. I think that, like, safe spaces are really important. And I've also been introduced to the notion of, like, brave spaces, where, if safe spaces are the places that we really know that, like, we can show up as we are. Brave spaces are the places that, there are thorns, and we are being really messy and trying to figure out this thing. So yeah, I think sometimes I really like the messy space too.
And I think that there's value as well in talking about channeling discomfort as a type of strength, as a way to say, I can push through this. And it kind of helps, if that's what helps for you. I'm kind of the same way. It helps facilitate that growth. It helps you kind of start pinpointing, what do I want to do with this piece? Or how do I want to express myself here? How much of this am I going to suppress? And then I know in some more radical cases, you'll get the people who get that discomfort and they say, why am I suppressing? Why should I make myself smaller for you? So I think that that's really a good take to have on it too. Just like thinking about all the different ways that, especially as queer people, different queer people at that, navigating and trying to figure out, how does this apply to me and how do I want to move through this? And that actually kind of leads into another thing I want to ask about, especially since we're talking about photography a little bit too. I'm going to go on a whim and say that you are not going to be the person that, as a photographer, you just have your nice camera and you take your photos and that's it. I want to know, where do you draw your inspiration for a lot of this work? What makes you keep going? Is it knowing that you are kind of defying the norm in the space? Is it something where it's just you're here for the creativity and that's all the drive you need? What's actually your inspiration as a creator in this kind of
Thanks for
space?
asking that. That's such a beautiful question. Um, I feel like I'm someone who doesn't like having his photo taken. I'm one of those people. And I don't like
Oh no.
being when I go on holidays, I don't take any selfies. I do none of that. And it's
Oh
and
my
it's
God. It's me. I
yes,
take all the selfies for you. Continue.
I just have never yeah, I've just never been that guy. So I feel like I have an understanding of uh, what it means to sit in front of a camera because I used to do self-portraits as in the confines of my home in an environment that was of my making, totally controlled, no one around. Um, and I I think when I sat f for myself and understood the significance of what it felt like I was doing, I became really excited at the idea of potentially giving someone else that experience too. And I do a lot of editorial photography,
Mm,
which means that I work for like publications and so like, you know, if they're profiling someone, then I'd go out and photograph them. And I'm really, really proud to have been able to build like most of my career on, portraits of queer and, folks of color within my community. And in that way, the early work from my career feels very much like a community collaborative driven thing. I feel really grateful that I've been able to build a career with imagery of folks in my community. And
mhm.
even though like was so much more attuned to excellence from minoritized communities, I still don't feel like
Mm.
there's enough space for us to be like just mediocre.
And I think
Yeah,
that,
I just think that like if you're being profiled in like a nationally circulated newspaper, I really want the person who's sitting in front of me to understand like the magnitude of what they've done. And I want them to sit in 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 front of my camera in a way that helps them kind of understand their power. And I see myself as kind of a mirror for them in that moment to reflect back at them like what I'm seeing.
see, and this is why I could never be a photographer, because I just have perfectionist
Oh, I have
problems.
that too.
And if that blade of grass doesn't look right, I'm throwing it. I have to throw
Oh
the
my
whole thing
gosh.
away. I can't deal with this. I used to do that for Instagram before it became
Now,
whatever it
yeah,
is anymore.
not Instagram.
Um, yeah, I remember when it was literally just photos, and I would have that kind of same time with graffiti.
Mm,
I love taking pictures of graffiti trains. This is like one of my favorite things because washed up artist, but I'm always going to be married to color theory. Love color theory. And I love seeing graffiti. And I love seeing the graffiti trains. And if I couldn't get the right shot, I couldn't do it. But I sidetrack easily. You haven't had a chance to speak on what
This,
inspires
so we're
you as a
good.
creator, or what are the things that
No, no.
wait, what do you mean we're good?
Sorry, please finish your sentence. Um,
I was just segueing about how I just couldn't be photography because I don't think on that depth. I'm too detail oriented in superficial ways, and I'm aware of that. But that's also why I kind of got away from art. But now,
Perfectionism.
M.
Oh, ooh. Oh, that's a word.
Yes.
Um, I
Yeah.
so th- when I say this, I do mean this. Having these conversations with people with I recently brought this up and I strongly believe in it. There's this saying that gets thrown out a lot on social media that's like, you're not learning if you're not talking to people you know disagree with inherently. And I don't agree with that, because there's definitely a line of people that I want to learn from, right? I really don't need to learn from somebody who is coming at me and telling me that like I don't deserve, or my friends or my loved ones don't deserve X rights because they are this way different. I'm good. I'm all set. I feel like I've heard them all. I feel like they're very similar.
Yes.
We're good. We're all set. But this, like, how you see the world, like, this is all still so very different. How could somebody, how could somebody not look at this conversation between the three of us and be like, oh, these are three very different perspectives, even though we inherently walked in here and we're like, hey, let's not be bigots, right? So that's what I'm inspired by. See, I also ramble, but that's what I'm inspired by. I'm inspired by seeing people embracing themselves, being themselves fully, sharing these perspectives of ways that I can't think of the world. I didn't walk in those shoes. When I look at a camera, I go, wow, that sure is a pretty flower. And I press the button and then I'm like, wow, now I have this flower forever. I'm going to make it my wallpaper. And then that's the...
And you know that flower looks so good. When you hit that shutter, when you took that, let me tell you, Mxiety, when you took that photo of that flower, yes,
That's actually the case.
I grow sunflowers in my garden, and we have so many bees around them, and they make me so happy. And I did oversimplify it, but like, for real.
Okay, period. That's right. That's joy.
But it is. It's so much.
Joy,
it's
though.
so much joy. And now I open it and I see this
Wow.
bee, and it makes me think of so many things. It makes me think of like hard work and like, where did that bee go afterwards? And I mean, that also says a lot about my brain than anything else. But my point about that was like, I might not... I have a really good friend from my childhood is an artist, and I love that we will both look at a sunset and we see different things. She will go into it and be like, wow, look at that color combo. Like, that's not natural how those things are. Yeah, okay, there you go. Like, oh, those colors, yeah, and the way the clouds and the horizon and the light, and that's how she sees the world, because that's the artist's view. And I'm looking at it and I'm going, wow, that's so cool that like light can bend that way. And then that cloud is that shape because of like wherever it collected water. And we're looking at the same thing, and we're not even seeing different things. We're not describing different things. We're just using different language and tools to describe them. So when you talk about like what inspires me, it's that I want to have conversations with people consistently, and this is I think why I haven't left Twitter or Instagram or any of those horrible places where you can read a lot about people who like just vehemently don't like you for who you are, and that's cool, but you can also learn so much from perspectives of people whose shoes you will never be able to walk in, which is literally every person except for yourself, right? And yeah, so it's that it's being inspired by the therapy sessions that I go into, by the books that I get to read that are related to the topic and totally unrelated to the topic. And I'm also a big proponent of like, specifically for the stuff that I talk about. I mean, mental health is literally everywhere. I can connect mental health to anything, and I am very much in the firm belief that anybody can. Everything connects back to our feelings and our emotions and how we perceive the world, and that's so, whether you're talking about like football to me, or you are talking about like the flower and the bee and what the bee is going to do after it's done pollinating the flower, all of that is hopefully going to inspire and teach me something and make me think about the world in a way that literally 2 seconds ago I could not have thought.
I think that you touch on a lot of really great things too. in terms of learning and teaching and being able to branch out, because I think there's a lot of value to kind of your pushback that you had at the beginning of your conversation, is that yes, I need to learn about different people and I need to engage different groups, but no, I'm not going to listen to someone who's going to tell me I don't deserve rights. Like, why would, no, I don't, I literally don't have time for this. No. But that is a whole different ask than welcoming people in my space who are neurodivergent, or welcoming people in my space who are disabled. And so that's the part that inspires me a lot personally, is the potential to always be learning something. The potential to always just kind of expand those horizons and go outside of my depths. And it's kind of what also helped me realize some of the things about my gender identity. It's what kind of helped me with coming to terms with the fact that, hey, you're asexual and that's actually really okay. Like, that's kind of neat. That's really cool. And talking about those things and putting those things out into my life much more, it's actually kind of like a really ironic segue. I think about life before being open and out, and ironically enough, I was a huge tomboy and I hated the color pink. Could not stand it. We can all see in 4K that has changed a little bit. That's changed a lot. And it's amazing how just like those different aspects of life and being able to just fully blossom. It's like, I never disliked pink. I disliked pink because everyone and their mom was trying to make me wear it when I was like 10 years old, in this freaking ugly fluffy dress, and it's super uncomfortable, and these tights suck, and these shoes are ugly, and the list just goes on, because again, I was a prima donna even at 10. But then as I kind of got to where I wanted to explore stuff, it's like, oh, actually, I like these things. I like engaging this stuff. And again, I adore color theory, but I'm actually kind of shocked at myself at how much pink stuff I have. Like, even my mouse is pink. It's a lot, but just finding that space to really learn and grow about yourself and about other people that are surrounding you really just makes all the difference in those things. It was the same thing with dresses. Growing up, hated them, could not stand them. As soon as I got more comfortable with myself, I was like, ooh, that sundress is really cute. I think I want that. And people are like, didn't you last month say you hate dresses? Please do not question me. I will like this dress. And I'm just swiping the card. And then I wear the dress twice and I forget I own it.
That's a different problem. That's a separate problem.
I love that
So
you,
now we're gonna
the
get
two of
into,
you are repping, pink and these very like saturated colors, because as a cisgender heterosexual man, I just hate pink. And I've always hated pink. And look at me, everything's black. Everything's black here because
you know,
I'm a man.
it's really it's really funny you say that, because I found out that I'm apparently a low-key pastel goth, because I love the powder pinks and all of that, but 90% of the rest of my wardrobe, gray or black,
Yes.
across the board. And they're just, it's like the big laundry pan, and you're trying to find that one black shirt, knowing good and well you have like 80.
No, you're not
so
that
why
one.
you want this one? Beyond comprehension. So it's just me
Wow.
furiously pulling out a bunch of shirts and be like, it's the wrong shirt.
Look at you
And then
just
my
opening
boyfriend,
subcultures. You're just creating subcultures, right? Like, this is the nexus. You know what I mean? Like, we're in the eye of the
right.
storm. Like, and all these people around us, they don't have a clue what we're doing in this little space.
Oh my gosh. It's just, it's such a funny thing to me just to kind of see like the different growth patterns we all have too, and the different ways that we build that inspiration and growth, and we continue to just live openly. But now we have to ask a little bit more of a serious question, because we couldn't escape without doing at least one serious question. But with me as your host, we're going to try and make sure things are good. So, what does representation mean to you in your space? And I want to make it clear that representation can be a multitude of things. It doesn't have to be the cut and dry, we're all stone faced and going, I am Asian American, therefore I want Asian Americans, or anything like that. What does it mean to you by and large? Like, all of the things we talked about with our work, our studies, our practices, what does representation mean to you? You got to go first. Justin
But I
went first the
didn't think
last
of
two.
an answer yet. That is profoundly incredible. What do you? I can't.
Oh, no.
All right. No. But I honestly, my first reaction is just like representation is being open back to all of those things that I just talked about. It's a diversity of opinions, diversity of looks, of whatever it is that's different than me. That's and having representation in my space of that is that's it. It's an opportunity to learn. So it's an opportunity to learn, but also to sit back and be quiet sometimes, which I'm not very good at. I'm sure it's pretty obvious if you watch like 5 minutes of my content. So yeah, no, it means in my space, representation means having a comfortable place where I know that I can be me without having to perpetuate any version of that onto other people. So like representation to me isn't oh, well, it's only okay if you're depressed, but like you get out of bed. Like I don't really understand when you're depressed and like you can't even shower for a few days. I don't get that. That doesn't connect. Representation is things that are outside of your experience, whatever that is. And again, within reasonable confines of like, then you have to cultivate a space where everybody is equally open to that and isn't like, oh, this is where my judgment line is. But also I want to make it clear, I have and will and have judged people. I'm not on any high horse of like, well, I ever looked at somebody and been like, why do you act like that? I definitely do, but part of representation is being able to step back and be like, oh, I just judged the crap out of something I didn't understand, and I should probably take a second, check myself, and then come back when I'm ready to not do that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Justin, what about for you?
This representation, this representation word, I don't know.
Wait a minute, where did we get this brush from?
I love that you just had that on.
It's just been sitting here.
I want a redo of
It's
the
just
whole
sitting
thing
here.
because I had
It's
no
just
idea
sitting here.
Luscious hair was on the table. What are we
We're
doing?
just pulling
What is
out
this?
props, like
What do you mean?
just
What is this?
No, I felt like maybe I was getting into it, and so I just needed to like brush. My hair was looking a little bit like lumpy, so and it feels really nice as well. Look, like I'm so grateful for the ways in which the world collectively, or at least like parts of America, like reevaluated the ways in which they were engaging with minoritized populations, which I think gathered maybe like this iteration of the movement like gathered a lot of steam during the pandemic when we were all locked up at home.
Yes.
I mean, so I'm really grateful for the ways in which like so many more people have started to receive their flowers, and I want to see all of those things continue to happen. I just think that like there are so many gatekeepers that ultimately get to decide who does and doesn't get given the opportunity to bring their talents like to the front. And there's so many things that those gatekeepers are thinking about. Most notably is like capitalism. They're all thinking about where they just. I mean, it's definitely an oversimplification and of the situation. But I just think that like we focus so much on the importance of representation that I think that what sometimes ends up happening is that we become even more tokenized just because they're like, oh, like
I'm
we should
so happy
we
you said
like
that.
yeah, like we should we need this person, we need this person, and then the same
Hmm.
people from the same communities keep getting picked and picked and picked,
Hmm.
and like it's also not fair to those people to have to speak
Yes.
for an entire group of humans, no matter how small or large that population is. And so
Hmm.
I don't actually feel like um, I don't feel like people are unnecessarily concerned with representation in a way that is like macro level, you know? Like
Yes.
the account executive at the ad agency is like worried about like the number of people that they have on like X, Y, and Z things to make sure that and those are all tied into like how to create a thoughtful space as well.
Hmm.
So it is a very important thing to be doing. But I think what I am more inspired by is just like work about actual like self-embodiment or self-actualization. If I'm
Hmm.
watching and it can be as like, I mean, self-actualization it doesn't even have to be art. It's about like watching like someone who you've known for several years like start taking hormones and then undergoing like a larger transformation um, within their gender journey. And like I feel like watching that person come into themselves, like looking at my friends on a night out on a Friday, you know, walking like pumping down the street in this tiny like latex dress, and just like making the world eat them, you know? Like that to me is art, you know? That to me is self-actualization that I want for myself. Like that's something
Hmm.
that I want to bring into my work. I want to be able to fa face the world just in a way that feels totally unabashed, uninhibited. And that doesn't mean that my expression is going to look like that, you know, but there is your body is able to identify the feeling of like what it means to like have to be relaxed in a moment.
Hmm. Hmm. And I'm gonna try and marry both of your answers because, for what it's worth, I feel like I don't have a whole lot of extra to contribute to this because I feel like both of you had some really potent pieces to your answers too, and especially the aspects of representation is going beyond the bounds of I just want to make sure I have people that I'm comfortable with in my spaces, but it also definitely goes beyond that of kind of like alluding to what you were saying before. It feels almost like a checkbox in some cases, where it's not about the long term goal of making more equity and making it so that more people come into the space and making it so that more people are getting their flowers and making it so that we can actually see these communities grow. It feels oftentimes like, okay, we're doing a campaign. We got a black person, we got an Asian person, we got someone disabled, and then they just walk away. And I think you really touched on something very important there too, kind of as like a, for lack of better phrasing, a challenge to a lot of these companies that want to work with people like us on this call. You have to be willing to expand your pools. The same way that for our communities, we had to expand our pools. We're on the ground level doing the work. And now we need you at the higher level that can elevate us to do that work alongside us. And that's going to include things like, hey, don't keep putting the same people in a program over and over. Hey, don't keep trying to put up just the same person every single time. There should be a case in a perfect world, I feel like, for representation conversations. I want to be able to look through a full 6 months of a company working with marginalized creators, and I want to see an actual diverse portfolio of creators. Because right now, and it's no tea, no shade, I see a lot of these companies, they have their portfolio, and there's always like those pinpoint guaranteed 4 to 5 people that show up every single time. And that is not nearly effective the way that these people think, not just because of the obvious other people aren't getting their flowers, but also because it lets us know that you kind of did the bare minimum and then you just
It was just a
walked.
checkbox.
And I, yeah, you just walked. And I think you're absolutely correct too that in terms of COVID, now that everyone was, well, for as long as we can see, was stuck inside, it really kind of forced the lens onto that for a hot second, where you didn't have the luxury anymore to just go out and you're like, I don't have to think about diversity. I'm going to Red Lobster. I don't have to think about diversity. I have, like, so and so POC friends, so what's the problem? Being stuck inside really put us in a position to be like, huh, that's all I have though, huh? That's not great, actually. And then all your POC friends in the back saying, but we tried to tell you this and you didn't want to hear it. Weird. I digress. But yeah, I think that you both.
Can I just say one more thing about representation as
You
well?
sure can. No, you're cut off. You can't do that anymore.
I just
Yes.
I'm really excited for the day that like queer people or just, any marginalized community can just be like so ordinary. I just want like look because like representation is so tied to like whether or not other people find it interesting
Ooh.
enough for people to continue funding it, or like it hinges on so many things. Like
Mm-hmm.
like think about like how different Hollywood be would be if like Black Panther or like Crazy Rich Asians didn't become like absolute runaway, like indisputable, like box office, critical, commercial, like hits.
I have that moment in video games. Bad. Real bad. We actually talked about it recently in my Discord. How, like, I see black characters, and there's that part of me that's just like, yes. And then there's that other part of me that's just like, what's wrong with it, though? What are you gonna do?
Mm,
Is it gonna be a bad guy? This is gonna be the antagonist. They're gonna die in the
mm.
first act. I they're gonna be the woman in the refrigerator. That's what's gonna happen. And that's not a great spot to be in because it's like, I want to be optimistic. I want to look at it, like you said, like it's ordinary. I want to be able to see someone making a movie saying, this is following so and so's autistic journey, and not have the immediate thought of, did you hire an autistic actor? Are they actually autistic? Are you just going off of tropes? Are you Is this going to be a dumpster fire? This is going to be a dumpster fire, ain't it? And that's people don't really
I mean, I just don't. No, no, no. Sorry. I just don't want. I just don't always want like people like us to feel like we have like everything that we give to the world has to be amazing.
Mhm.
Because when like before Crazy Rich Asians came out, I'll just speak like from there. I was like prepared to not like the movie, prepared to like drag my feet about it, and like when I saw what it like triumph it was, it made me feel so good. But I had been prepping for the moment that like people would say that it's a dumb like a bad movie, or the plot is this, or like there was this
I
problem, or
can't
that,
relate to
and
it.
I just felt
That's
like.
that's
The
my favorite.
popular one. This is unrelatable.
Yeah.
Is
This
that
movie is so
I
weird.
related to a rat cooking, but like a little girl, a little Asian girl in Toronto. I can't relate to
Yeah.
that. I don't know what you're
The
talking about.
Yeah,
ugliness of
it's honestly crazy.
the
I mean,
ugliness
like
of it.
it's wild to me that white people have been able to make movies for so long, and there's so many bad movies. Pole Blot Mole Cop. You know that movie?
We're
You know
going
that
all the
movie,
way there.
Pole Blot Mole Cop? There are at least two Pole Blot Mole Cops. And let me tell you, Pole Blot Mole Cop number one sucked. Okay?
Coming
Sucked.
for edges. We need to talk
Okay?
about your production values, sir. Sir, no, this is not okay. But like, kind of.
But it's like when do folks of color like when do like disabled people when do we just get to produce a project that sucks
You
and
There's
know
like
no room
what?
for error.
and it wouldn't deter.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
there's
was
no room for
thinking about.
error, and
I was
it feels like such a high
sorry.
pressure act.
I'm so riled up about this stuff. I was just talking to
Get
my
riled up.
partner
No, go
about
in.
Wonder Woman and how the first one came out, and I was like, yes, all right, we're gonna get female lead movies finally. All right, awesome, and it was so good, and I loved it, and so many people embraced it. And then the second one came out, and
84.
Yeah, I'm in the group of like
It's
anyway, lots of noises.
But
And
I
then-
agree with all of that so much. So much.
But then she
because it's like
doesn't
we don't
have-
get the space to be mediocre.
Right, but that's my point is like, if I've seen plenty of directors who are white males who've made that second movie and it sucked, and then they went and made the third one. We're not seeing a third Wonder Woman. And I don't know what she's...
Okay,
that's
that
the part that
part.
I was talking about.
That
That's
part.
exactly
Yeah.
it.
That
It's-
part.
no,
That's what's
the
pissing me.
part.
I'm
That's-
very
hang on.
angry.
Yeah, and tying it all together, it's the part where you're not going to get the third Wonder Woman, and you're not going to get the third Wonder Woman. Specifically, they're going to point to how, well, it just didn't perform well, and there's no space for anyone on this call to be like, but all of these didn't perform well, and they're on their eighth
Exactly.
movie, so what's good?
Right.
Like, what are we doing
Exactly.
here? So it's not just the fact that we don't get the space to be mediocre, which I think is a really good way of putting it, because even when I'm engaging like activism conversations and stuff, I have to tell people like it is so taxing and draining, not just talking about the thing, but also making sure that I am so deliberate in what I'm saying that it is impossible
dare
for
make a
people to
mistake.
grab it. Yeah, it's impossible for people to grab it and be like, oh, she used ableist terminology, canceled, 86th type of thing, because that's all it takes. Meanwhile, I get to watch my cohorts that are melanin redacted do these things to the utmost degree with mountains of mistakes, mountains of typos. They can be called in at multiple points of it, and then they get to just keep on going. And I'm like, I just want to know one time what it's like to just be a normal everyday human and not be held to a standard that's up to here. And I know too, Em, in your conversation, this ties a lot with some of your mental health work too, where it just gets to that fine point where it's like, I am trying my best as well. Please, I'm begging. Can I just get like, someone put it on Twitter recently where it said, bro, y'all want a mental health day? I need like a mental health month. Like, legit. Because it's just so much going on all the time. And then when you're marginalized, you're expected to be perfect. And that's in film, that's in photography, that's in art, that's in how we're
Advocates.
presenting ourselves.
I
Yeah,
even
it's
want to
in
bring
advocacy.
it back to advocate, like the level that people who speak up on these issues, the level that they are held to a standard versus somebody. I've seen the person who's like come into the space and been like, mental health and streaming is terrible, and everybody's like, yeah, wow, this guy, nobody else has been saying this, and I'm sitting on the sidelines and going, I'm very, very grateful that we are talking about it. That's all I want is the continuation of this conversation. But also, what have I been doing for 5 years?
It's the part where you started with, I am grateful for this opportunity. However, comma.
I'm so great.
So-
Thank you so much for saying something. You're not the first person saying it. Just wish it. Okay, all right. You're the first person who said it. You know what?
But-
It's fine. It's fine. Just talk about it. Just I need
Which
you
is
to talk.
so funny because the next question I was going to ask, but we're going to be short on time here. We've already kind of talked about it a little bit at length, which is just, what is your hopes? What are your dreams, your aspirations? What are the W's that you want for the next generation of young LGBTQ creatives? I think we already talked on some of it a little bit, where it's like, I want to see LGBTQ kids be able to just be normal. And what I mean by be normal is I want them to be able to fall off their bikes. I want them to be able to put out that project that is like, wow, that sucks, but you tried type of thing. I want them to be able to actually do those things. I want them to be able to be less like me, where when they're in a hosting gig, they don't feel like their head wrap, their mic, everything has to be immaculate, or else you're not going to be taken seriously as a host. Because that's a real thing that I walked in with today. It's like, if my head wrap is slightly crooked, people are going to be like, oh, this host is garbage. I want them to be free of that mentality. I would love to see more LGBTQ kids be able to get in these positions and not feel like they have to breathe excellence to get there, you know? Because they're just humans. They're just people trying to do stuff, and that's it. I do want to get your thoughts on that question, though, before we close out, because we do unfortunately have to end this here in a couple of minutes. So tell us, what do you want to see for the future LGBTQ community?
I really want to give young people space to like fail, to suck, to be really good, to spend a lot of time like understanding like how they interact with the world, how I want to give them space to do all of those things, and I want each one of them to be able to have the resources to
Mhm.
self-actualize.
I feel
That's
that. I
gorgeous.
feel that.
That's so
Em, what
gorgeous.
about you?
Oh my God. Do you want the Miss America answer first, or
No,
because
you
the
don't
Miss?
have to do the Miss
No,
America
no, no,
answer.
no. Because the Miss
No.
America answer is actually genuinely one that I, not world peace though, but like I do really want to see a world where mental health, where therapy is accessible to people, like, and not in the like, here's
Mm.
this app where maybe hopefully you'll talk to somebody who is going to help you. I mean, like, genuinely, I want to see a diversity of therapists out there available so that you can find yourself in a therapist that can speak to you culturally, emotionally, and on every level of your being. I want you to be able to reach out and find that therapist without having to call 20 ghost numbers that insurance companies keep on file so that it looks like they have therapists on file of, varying backgrounds. I want insurance companies to actually cover therapy and not say they're going to cover it, but really it's after this $3,000 very accessible deductible. Why you can't just afford that? And that's after working a full-time job and you have, if you're lucky to
I was
have
like, that was after they
insurance.
took off what they're going to contribute. It's
Yeah,
like, damn, 3 grand
there's so
still.
many layers. I'm like, I know I'm forgetting stuff of how like atrocious the system is, but
Hmm.
I want to see that, and because I do believe that I'm not saying that like therapists are the solution to every problem. I am though saying part of self-actualization that Justin's talking about, that you PT have, talked about in various ways, is being able to bounce off whatever is happening to you to a resource that can give you feedback in a way that you need to hear it. Maybe that's an amazing friend, maybe, and if you're blessed with that, like, that's awesome. And if you are blessed with access to mental health care, that's also awesome. I don't want there to be 20,000 barriers.
That unfortunately concludes our time today on our panel talking about creating openly, what it's like and what you want to see in being an LGBTQIP plus creator and things and stuff you want to have happen in the space. Before we all sign off officially, we do have to do the official. Now we're doing the Miss America goodbyes. We're gonna start with you, Justin. Tell us again who you are, your pronouns.
I am Justin J. Wee. My pronouns are he, him. Thank you so much, by the way, to Logitech, and it's been so nice to chat to you and get to know you. If people want to follow me on Instagram, they can follow me at DJ Dumpling, and I'm working on a bunch of stuff. I guess you'll just have to keep your eyes
Alrighty,
posted.
perfect. And then M, how about you?
It just doesn't ring the same to be like, I'm working on NDAs, follow me. Yes.
Yeah.
I felt that.
So I have research coming out next year. I'm part of the change. I have the honor of being part of the Change Council for Logitech for Creators. That's really wicked cool. And then I stream on Thursdays, and we talk about like feelings and emotions, and I like overthink about how just like existing in this space affects us existing in this space. Very, very meta. And hopefully we make you laugh and only cry if that's what you want to do at that time. But yeah, you can follow me mostly on Twitch, definitely on Twitter, and this was so, Justin, this was so cool. PT, thank you so much for giving the space.
I've been your host and moderator, Pleasantly Twisted. You can find me everywhere under Pleasantly Twisted. That's TWSTD. Please don't put the vowels. I don't know who that is, and so I don't know who you're talking to. I stream 3 times a week, Tuesday, Thursday, Fridays. And counter to what we did here, I curse a lot, I drink wine, and we play a lot of video games. Some of them we play really well, and other ones we play really poorly. I also am the art director on a Kickstarter called Into the Motherlands. I'm working with a bunch of really dope artists. We're making really cool pictures in a book. It's a good time. It's a great time. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining us, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day.